to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Serena Vos. I am a family lawyer, and I'm based in beautiful Richmond, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And it's a great suburb to enjoy as a workplace. And there's a lot of culture and sport in Richmond, which made it very attractive to me to settle down in this area for my workplace. I think the best thing to do is to start by talking a little bit about my why. So why I became a lawyer, why I came to Australia, and why I do what I do and how I do what I do. So I come from a very diverse family background. My mother is Indian, and she has a little bit of mixed heritage. And she was a refugee from Uganda who came to Canada when she was in her early 20s. And my father is the child of Dutch immigrants to Canada. They came to Canada shortly after World War II. They originally were missionaries in Dutch Guyana, and they decided to come to Canada and settle down there. And somehow, after all of that, I ended up in Australia. So I think why I do what I do is because of my father's parents. My Oma and Opa were incredible individuals who believed in serving the community. And that's something that I've taken on board and have prioritized in my life since I was very young. My grandparents started the first home for disabled children in Canada. They recently celebrated 60 years, a few years back, of their organization being in existence. So that was a huge monumental occasion for us and as a family. And how it started was my grandparents came to Canada. They were promised that they would be given farmland and the ability to farm and start up their own farm and business and, create the dream life. And they were so excited. And when they got to Canada, unfortunately, it wasn't really what it was set out to be. They were living in really poor conditions. They weren't getting paid properly, and they were working very, very hard, and they were not provided for at all. And so they did what they needed to do until they were able to move on to their next chapter. And my grandmother was a nurse by background, and my grandfather found work in a factory. And they would hear stories of families who were really struggling because they had children that they did not know how to care for. And back in those days, they didn't have the medical technologies that they do have now, particularly shunts. So a lot of children were born with something called hydrocephalus, and it's an extreme enlargement of the head. And these children would have a lot of fluid in their head around their brain, and so they were mentally and physically disabled, and they couldn't sit upright or anything like that. And so my grandparents felt the calling to take these children in and create a home for them and help them and, try and work to get some medical advancements. And my grandfather worked 3 jobs to take care of these children that were brought to them. And my grandmother cared for them. And they also had 6 children of their own. So it was a huge, huge undertaking for them. And they eventually were able to connect with individuals who could help them establish an organization. And now we have what's called Sunbeam Home and Sunbeam Lodge. Now, Sunbeam, I think it's called Sunbeam Residential Center now. And that is a government organization. And Sunbeam Lodge is what my parents currently run. And it's a home for disabled children and some adults, because the children have lived there for so long into adulthood, it would be not appropriate to move them because of their very fragile immune systems and medical needs. And so I grew up with that as my world. I was exposed to a lot of culture within my family, very diverse backgrounds, sometimes competing ideologies at times, but it was a really great way to grow up. And also within the facility, I was exposed to a lot of cultures, and it was amazing. I was a child who ate all different kinds of food, got excited about all different kinds of food. And if you wanted to upset me, you'd give me, chicken nuggets and French fries, because I wanted to try everything that was new and exciting and exotic. So it was a really, really great way to grow up. But it exposed me to a lot of struggle within family and community, because when people have a child with special needs, it can take a huge, significant toll on them personally and also on their relationship. And I would see families come to my parents struggling and needing support and guidance and not really having anywhere to turn. And it made me really think about what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I wanted to definitely be serving my community and helping others where I could. And eventually I was able to come to Australia and do my law degree. And that's something that I always kept front and center of mind, is my purpose and my mission to help others and to serve the community. And so that's why I fell into family law. People come to me when they're experiencing some of the worst times of their lives. And while I'm not a magician and I can't fix it, I can do my best to make going through the process as easy and painless for them as possible, and in a way where they feel supported. My legal practice is a little bit different than your standard legal practice. I have what I consider to be a holistic practice. So I focus very much on de-escalating disputes, non-agitation, and trying to resolve things quickly without the need to go to court, because court is when no one wins, really. You lose a lot of control in the process. It's very expensive. You're subjected to delays, and a lot of people end up making decisions for you rather than you having control and making decisions for yourself. The other aspect of my practice is I have a vast network of wellness professionals and support professionals who I work very closely with. And when I find my clients struggling, I always think, okay, how can I help them? Who can I refer them to? How can they be supported as they go through this very difficult process? And so I will support my clients by referring them to health professionals, either mental health professionals, different types of therapists, some of the traditional therapies and some of the more woo-woo therapies. Everyone has a different palette and what works for them. And also their physical health, because if you're in a place where you're not well, you're not physically healthy, you're already under pressure, it's not a really good place to make decisions. And you often hear people say that when you're scared or unwell, that's when you make really bad decisions. So I want my clients to be making the best decisions possible for them. So I will refer them to health professionals. And I always tell them, this will save you time and money in the long run. And it's much better that you invest in yourself rather than spend money on a fight. And I find that with my clients, when they've invested in themselves, they're in a place where they can make good decisions. And as a lawyer, we act on our clients' instructions. So I'm only as good as the instructions I'm given. So if I put my clients in a place where they are thriving, they're feeling empowered, they are well balanced, not only are they giving me good instructions that will help their family law case, but they're also able to show up and be present for their family. They're able to put aside their differences and try to engage with the other party in the situation. And they're also able to be present and available for their children and try to shield their children from the dispute as much as possible. So that's one of the major priorities for me in what I do. So my passion for family law, it it I would say it's based in my desire to help people, but it's also, I feel that there's a lack of support for clients in the legal profession. And I am passionate about sending the message of de-escalation and resolving disputes without a huge fight. I think the sign of an excellent family lawyer is a lawyer who has great relationships with other members of the profession, who can sit down and have a meaningful conversation with the lawyer representing the other party and say to them, look, let's just try and get this done for our clients. This fight is not going to be helping anyone. Let's try and figure out how we can focus on our clients' values and what is important to them, so we can get to yes and agreement a little bit faster.
Wow, what a fantastic life you've had. Listening to you speak and the intersectional lens that is your life, you are a cocktail of many, many, many nations, a cocktail of many cultures as well. So has this helped you, especially living here in Australia, which is really a melting pot of different nations, people coming in from other countries? Does your intersectionality help you in your work?
I think it really does. I think one of the benefits is of growing up with such a diverse cultural experience from such a young age is I understand practices, traditions, and um, cultural finesses, well, cultural intricacies, I guess you would say, of various cultures and of, my diverse clients that come to me. I understand a little bit about, in my limited capacity, because it's not my story, it's my mother's story, but I understand what people go through when they leave their home country, not by choice, but by a decision that's been made for them. And I've seen what it looks like when somebody is trying to find their new identity because they have an identity from their past life, but now they're in this new life, but what they're called is not necessarily how they want to be known. They want to be known as, I'm Serena Vos. I am a strong, powerful woman who came from a really difficult family situation. And I created this amazing facility with my husband, and we take care of these incredible children. So I think being able to have that experience, it has made it a little bit easier for me to relate to my clients. I think a lot of people look at their clients and their problems and their situations from a strict lens of their own personal experience, and that doesn't work. You might be a really great lawyer, you might be a technical lawyer, but if you don't understand the language your client is speaking, or where they're coming from, or why they're behaving the way they do, or what pressures and expectations are on them culturally, not just professionally or personally, I think that makes a huge difference.
It sure does. So what are some of the most significant challenges that you face in family law cases, especially when dealing with sensitive matters like divorce or children's issues?
I think some of the challenges, there's two answers to this question. There's a professional challenge, and then there's the family law side challenge. So a professional challenge is, in law, a lot of your worth is determined by how much money you bill. Okay. And billing does not take into account the fact that you need to sit down and listen to someone's story so you can understand them. And I think a lot of times professionally, there is so much pressure to perform as a solicitor in order to progress your career that you don't have the time to sit down and understand your clients. So from a professional perspective, I think that is the biggest challenge of family law is your value is not based in how well you relate to the client, how well you understand the client, how well you are engaging in a way that makes sense to the client. It's you need to do these things to make this much money in this many hours for your boss because that's what a good lawyer does. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges in family law. And another challenge in relation to that is the fact that going to court makes more money. So if you go to court, if you're engaging in the court process, if you're engaging in the dispute, you can perform so much better professionally as a solicitor, but you're not really doing what you need to do for your client. And that's a struggle that I've really been faced with throughout my career, because I think that particularly in personal services like family law, I also do estate planning and estate litigation. In those type of sensitive environments, you really need to set aside some time to really listen and understand your client, their experience, their perspective, and understand what's important to them. Not necessarily what you think is the right thing to do, but understand what's important to them and why, and then contrast that with what does the law say? What are we likely to succeed at? What are the fights worth making? What are the points worth making? I understand your perspective here. I see that this is really important to you. I don't know if I can legally make it happen this way, but this is an option for you because it aligns with your values.
So, in your experience, how does diversity, and that's including culture, gender, etc., play a role in family law cases? And how do you address these diverse needs?
I think that there's a little bit of a lack of education amongst general practitioners, not necessarily family law practitioners, but I do find that there can be a little bit of a misunderstanding in relation to gender equality per se. I think that because there have been very strict roles that were implemented as a family unit when the family was together. And now they want, there's a shift to a different type of role within both parents. There can be a little bit of frustration by some male clients in relation to not having enough time with the children. While I feel and empathize for someone, because I couldn't imagine what it would be like to not be able to just go into your lounge room and see your child every day. That is just something that could be so devastating. But I think that there is the issue with, there are struggles that I find with my clients when a child is breastfeeding, understanding that if the child is very young, they need to be with the primary carer. And it has nothing to do with gender equality. It has to do with the developmental stages of the child. And people need to remember that any dispute in family law relating to parenting is, number one, you have to consider the best interests of the child. And it's not about you, it's about the child. And I think that the struggle is both parents forget this sometimes, and they tend to take a little bit of ownership of the child, and what you need to do is you need to say, okay, this is how old my child is, this is what the situation is going to have to look like. I'm going to have to be a little bit flexible to make sure that my child has the benefit of both parents in their lives. The other thing I also see is a little bit of disparity in relation to the concept of contributions. I think that people often forget that contributions are not only financial, but they're non-financial. And there can sometimes be this mentality that, well, I paid for everything and they were just the carer of the child. And I feel that there's a lot of bias in relation to what being the carer of the child is. I mean, that's a very difficult job. And if I had the option, which, I have had the privilege of, I've decided personally that I don't want to have children and I want to be the person who will work if that's, that's just who I am. And so from that
Yes.
perspective, I can empathize with people who have sacrificed their career, they've sacrificed their ambition, and they've taken time to be the carer of the child, and that contribution needs to be valued, because how a child is raised determines how that child progresses and all the choices that they make. What you learn as a child, is how you learn to be treated. And I think that a
Mm.
lot more significance needs to be given to the contribution of the primary carer in the assessment of a financial settlement, because whilst one person is working and earning money, the other person is also sacrificing at the same
Yeah.
time. And it's not that they don't want to earn money, it's that this needs to be done. Childcare is really expensive. Financially, it makes more sense for me to stay at home. So that's what I'm going to do. And I do find that can be a struggle sometimes,
Mm.
that I
Mm.
face, where people can take a very staunch approach to, well, no, they didn't contribute anything. I paid for everything, and therefore I should get more.
So, how do you approach representing clients in emotionally charged situations, such as, divorce and custody battles?
Well, I think the first thing you need to do is leave your judgment at the door. And I think that people would assume that all lawyers do that, but they don't. I've experienced it. I've seen it. I think you need to just be a blank sheet, and you need to just go in and speak to your client, understand where they're at, and try to diffuse the situation by offering them support, resources, because they're hurting. They're in a place where they don't want to be, and they feel very lonely. They feel like people look at them like they're a pariah sometimes. There's a lot of shame associated with marriage breakdown, and particularly with victims of family violence. I think that a lot of times they feel like they will get in trouble if they talk about it. There is a lot of misunderstanding with how a victim mindset works, because they are in defensive mode. They are just trying to keep themselves safe. And there's a lot of misunderstanding in, why didn't they just leave? They could have just left. And it's not that easy. There's cultural expectations, cultural pressures. Their family might not support their desire to leave a situation that's not healthy for them or the children. And they come to you and they are scared because they think that you're automatically going to judge them, um, because they've made this choice, or that for that it's their fault. A lot of family violence, the way it's perpetrated is it's done in a way to make the person who is the victim, I should actually say survivor, that's the more appropriate word, the survivor, feel a great
Mm.
degree of shame and
Yeah.
embarrassment, and a feeling that it's their fault. And when they tell their story, everyone's going to tell them that they were wrong, just like they told them. And it's really, really sad for me to see. And I think, I don't talk about this often, but I'm a survivor of family violence. I had a partner who was, made some pretty poor decisions in his behavior towards me. And I put up with it. And the reason why, the shame, the fear, I was embarrassed. How can you be this strong, passionate family lawyer who goes to court and acts for clients and victims and survivors, and, does this every day for a job? But then when you go home, you're copying it the way they are. So I think that has really shaped my ability to understand my clients who
Mm.
are in extreme situations, where they feel embarrassed. I also have a background in deviance. So my honors thesis when I did my undergraduate degree in Canada was deviance. And so there's very little that shocks me or that I've never heard of. So I think
Mhm.
sometimes that also helps my clients open up to me because I tell them that there's very little I haven't seen, there's very little I haven't read about, there's very little I haven't studied, and there's very little I haven't experienced. So anything you
Hmm.
say to me is not going to be met with any kind of judgment or position. I'm just here to listen.
Have you observed any recent trends or changes in family law, and how do these impact the way that you practice?
I think that there is a trend now
Mm.
towards a more holistic approach. I am finding that in my recent experience, the language and correspondence between solicitors is a lot more cooperative, a lot more facilitative rather than aggressive and adversarial. I mean, you still get a few letters that are, that have a very staunch approach. But I do find that the trend is to be a little bit more leaning towards resolving the dispute without going to court.
Yes,
And there's a lot of merit to that.
I like that. So, what is your key piece of advice that you would give individuals who are about to navigate the family law system?
I would say choose your representation wisely. I think it's a really good idea to go around and find a lawyer who you feel comfortable with, who is the
Mm.
right fit for you, who is able to understand where you're coming from, and be firm in their approach where they need to be when they say, "Look, you're kind of going down the wrong path," but is also empathetic. I always tell my clients when I meet with them, if you don't think I'm the right fit for you, that's no problem. I don't get offended because this is
Mm.
going to probably be one of the most personal disputes you will ever experience in your life. And you need to feel comfortable with the person who is guiding you through this
Yeah.
process. Because if you're not comfortable with them and you're not telling them everything, that could have some pretty dire consequences for you later on. It's better for me to
True.
know everything up front and manage that in my strategy and approach, and also get you supported right away, rather than finding out later on in the game and either not being able to use that information because we're kind of out of time or it might not be taken well, or to
Mm.
do damage control at that point.
So, looking forwards, what are your professional goals as a principal lawyer in family law, and how do you plan to continue making a positive impact in your clients' lives?
Well, my goal is to establish a thriving family law practice at Andy Lawyers in Richmond, where I work. I'm the principal of the family law practice, and I want to develop that practice to be a holistic practice that's known for treating clients with empathy and understanding, and also being able to act for individuals from various cultural backgrounds and diversity, and know that they can have lawyers who will take the time to understand them, that they are not a transaction, they are your client. And that's really important to me and part of my ethos, because as lawyers, we are privileged. It's called legal professional privilege for a reason. We are privileged to be in a position where we understand the system, we understand the laws, and we can then guide you through it. So for me, my goal is to develop a very unique, holistic practice at Andy Lawyers and grow that practice. That's my short-term goal.
Mhm.
And as a lawyer, my goal is to change lives. Growing up the way I did with my incredible parents, with my incredible grandparents, who have effected so much change since I was a young child. I didn't care what I did. I mean, I had some ideas of what I wanted to do. They were always lofty ambitions, but my biggest goal was always to effect change. And so what I want to do with my life is I want to effect change positively. I want to change lives. I want to improve somebody's experience. If I can make someone's day a little bit better than it was before they interacted with me, then that's a win. And that will always be my goal.
Serena, it's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you today. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, your knowledge, and your skills. A real honor to see somebody who's so passionate about their work. And thank you for sharing your personal experience as well, because that adds another layer and dimension to it as well. Thank you so much. And
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time today to have a chat to me and learn a little bit more about who I am and what I do and how I carry myself.
It's an absolute pleasure. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing you people from all walks of life, talking about all facets of our lives, the intersectional lens that we view the world. So come back again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thanks again, Serena. And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open,